And hello, welcome to the Good Listening To Show, Stories of Distinction and Genius. Chris Grimes is me. We've had a bit of a summer lull, but now we're back the first day of September, back to school. And today's a very, very exciting day in the clearing where the show is energetically set, because today is Competition Winner Day. Please welcome Pete Townsend to the Good Listening To Show. Townsend, make sure I say that properly, not Townshend, which we were just riffing about, which is the other Pete Townsend's famous name.
Slightly more famous person. Yeah. I'm the lost one, the one that nobody's ever heard of. So that's fine.
But this is going to come out. I know you did get into a film premiere because of a happy mix-up.
Yeah.
You said the name and you were on the guest list, and then you got in, and he was probably rummaging in the bins at the back going, why didn't I get in? Probably. So I was mentioning this is Competition Day. This is a special Legacy Life Reflections series strand of the show. Without any morbid intention, Legacy Life Reflections is to preserve either your own story, to capture your own story, or the story of somebody very precious to you for posterity, lest we forget before it's too late. And Pete and his wonderful wife, Sue, entered a competition when you came to the Rob Brydon theatre show version of What I'm Up To live in Bristol a couple of months ago. You scanned the QR code and you actually set a precedent, or Sue did, in filling in the form. What I didn't notice or realize until the competition entries were in from the 320 sitting in the audience, you gave the most wonderful answer, Sue, who's sitting in the background there, as to why she would love Pete to win the competition. And you've set a precedent happily now. I'm going to be exhibiting about this construct at the Entrepreneurs Convention in about a month's time. And I now know that the criteria that I'm going to search for is to find the most interesting answer as to who you'd like to nominate or gift the episode to. So welcome to the show, and Legacy Life Reflections is what this is about. I'll contextualize that a bit more further, but how's morale, Pete Townsend, and how are you feeling about being here?
Trepidatious is the honest answer. Yeah. I've never done anything like this before.
And Sue did mention that it's prompted you to think differently, deeper, in an unusual way.
Yeah, it's frightening.
And hopefully, as we'll demonstrate, it'll be frightening in a good way, because there's an invocation in what's about to come to go as deep as you like, where you like, how you like, using the unique storytelling structure, which I hope you'll attest at the end, and we'll find out as to whether you found it thoroughly enjoyable or not. So there's an existential cut and thrust deliberately, but as I say, without any morbid intention. My own father was the first ever willing guinea pig for this about 5 years ago. He knew what I was up to. There was no morbid intention, but my dad actually died about a year ago, almost to the date. But now that I still have his story captured on film and in podcast form, I can't tell you how precious it is, which is why I got on the open road of doing this. So you're very, very welcome, Pete Townsend from Bristol. You have been described as being an actor and procrastinator. But how would you, when people say, oh, hello, what do you do? What's your favorite way of saying who you are and what you do, Pete?
I've got another one there, which was a supporter of lost causes. I came into acting just through doing Amjam and being a very loud mixed infant when I was at school, and
a loud mixed infant, did you say?
Yeah.
You weren't mixed up. You went to a mixed infant school setup, you mean?
Oh, yeah. But I was very loud. I had the loudest voice, I think. And so ended up sort of standing up and saying things when people said, oh, who can we get to say that? So I was asked.
Pete was always put into the limelight.
Yeah.
I have actually sincerely complimented you in the conversations we've had before today as to what a lovely voice, not just for radio, but you do have a lovely, lovely voice. So this is going to be a very mellifluous time together.
It will, yeah. So I just hope that at the end of it, most people are still awake.
And so soporific is good too. If you want something
very soporific, yeah.
A lot of people listen to podcasts either to doze off or to sort of just fill in side activity as they go about their day. You mentioned found or sort of savior of lost causes. Just tell us a bit more about that, first of all.
Well, I always go for the wrong one. So I've still got some old Betamax recorders at home. I've got a lot of sort of 1950s, 60s cars, which are crumbling away. I recently found how crumbling they are. And lots of things which I really shouldn't do, but I just don't. I hate to see things passing by.
So you're a bit of a hoarder of cars, particularly.
Well, I have been, yeah. I just had the space, and so I thought, well, why not use it? But then life gets in the way, stops you doing these projects you thought you were able to do.
Yeah.
Another one came along, then another one, then another. Before you know where you are, you've got a backlog, which goes back for years, and you can't actually physically do them, especially if you're trying to do other things as well.
So we riffed on it not being quite as extreme as Diogenes syndrome, where you hoard everything, but you find things difficult to throw away.
Yeah, I can still find my bed. But I know some people can't even find their bed to sleep in because it's so bad, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were talking about a book by Quentin Blake called The Green Ship, where things can have ivy grown, and the green ship, once majestic, is now a little bit overgrown.
Yeah.
Is that a sort of proper description of your garden? Probably.
Oh my God, yeah. Actually, I'm now going to be. Please don't be offended, but I was just thinking of Life of Grime, you know, play on words here. Yeah. I've not quite got to that, but
yes.
you know, it's quite frightening when you see, and it obviously is something of a disease, isn't it? I mean, a mental disease, definitely. And I'm halfway there.
But still,
Sue is trying to rescue me.
Yes, and a healthy hoarder, we can call you that.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is, having had a van which I came by, and then helped people clear houses and things, their own, and then finding I was clearing friends' houses who died and your parents' houses and things. I've suddenly got a whole load of stuff, and I feel I can't cast these to the wind. I've got to contemplate them and go through them, and you know, and even my father's awful photographs. I've got no idea where they were, somewhere in the Mediterranean, you know, back in the 60s and 70s. And I find it so difficult to even think about throwing them away.
So you don't know whether it's Torremolinos, Lanzarote, wherever.
No,
you've just got these wonderful random old photographs. And that's intriguing. You help people do their own house emptying. Is that
well,
something...
I did do. And well, no, it was just friends who died, you know, and parents. And I ended up, I can't throw that away. And, you know, most people do. They just junk everything, don't they? And
don't throw them away. Get Pete to come in and he won't throw them away either.
Exactly right. And it'll be another 20 years and they'll, you know, they'll gain some importance in his life, but they'll just end up sitting there like everything else. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And when Sue filled in the why she'd most like you to be the guest, you do have a very, very intriguing particular part of your life story that I hope you'll get onto, to do with twinning, which we'll get onto.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my great pleasure to curate you through the following structure. So we use the familiar structure to those of you who've been following the program so far, but with a slightly more existential deep dive into the idea of legacy and how you'd most like to be remembered at the end. Again, no morbid intention, but there's going to be a clearing or serious happy place of my guest's choosing. Then there's going to be a tree. I'm going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. How'd you like these apples? And then there's going to be a couple of random squirrels, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, a golden baton, some alchemy, some gold, and a cake. So it's absolutely all to play for. So any questions before we start?
No, I'm just thinking the cake is good to have at the end because it gives me something to aim for, being a cake liker. You know.
Head towards the cake.
All right, will do.
A cake liker, like a secret lemonade drinker, that advert in the 1970s or 80s. R. White's, if you remember that one. I'm a secret lemonade drinker. Do you remember that? Somebody will remember.
Yeah.
You could write in about that. So let's get you on the open road.
Okay.
What is, Pete Townsend, a clearing or serious happy place for you in your life? Where do you always go or have always gone to get clutter-free, inspirational?
I haven't got an always gone because I've very rarely ever been clutter-free. I can think of places that I've enjoyed the sense of freedom and openness of you know, and I was going to suggest a cliff walk on a, you know, looking on the coast, and just sitting there in the sunshine, and that's when I'm probably got my head clearest, probably. But in a place I've never really ever gone anywhere. I just keel over at the end of the day and fall asleep. That's basically
like a Duracell bunny who's knackered, battery's flat, and good night.
Yeah.
So you have a monumental ability to be just present and in the now, by the sound of it.
I wouldn't say that. I tried to be, but there's just so many other things to do. And then the end of the day comes along, and you know, you're keeling over time to fall asleep.
Sleep.
And sleep.
And when were you last on one of your hill or seaside walks?
Well, got a group of friends. We all left school in '65, and we meet up every now and then. And we just wandered around Durham Park the other day, and up on the top, I'd never been. There's a spot where you can see over the Severn Estuary and over to Wales and everything. Wonderful just to stand there and just look at it, and surrounded by beauty and trees and birds, and and that was great. I mean, it's only and we're not talking of a long period of time, but it was just sufficient.
So there's a happy juxtaposition in you liking and enjoying the notion of clutter, but every now and again when you go, because obviously you can't take goods and chattels with you when you go on a mountain.
I don't like clutter, but I can actually, it can disappear from my eyesight. Somehow I manage to live in clutter but not see it. And I think this is how people get away with clutter, is anybody coming in would say, God, what an awful place. But you don't see it because your mind is set on something else, and in your mind's eye this is just all around you, which you don't actually take on board anymore. It's now become part of the way you live. And and I think people, if otherwise, you would actually go nuts.
Yes,
trying to deal with everything which is in front of you,
And your
wife's... and you do it because there are important things that you've got to do in a sequence.
Yeah,
and that's way down the road in the sequence. So okay, in due time I'll get there, but I've got to do this now.
Yes. And your wife Sue, who obviously adores you, you've been married for 2 years, but together many more. But presumably she knows you came with clutter.
She certainly did. She actually had to help me take the front door off and remove a part of the front door before the door would shut properly, and then clear a pathway up the house, up through the staircase. And
this is before you could carry her across the threshold.
Yeah.
So we're going to go for, I mean, Derham Park, no one's ever mentioned that yet. So shall we go for a clearing, which is in Derham Park with your friends, or are you on your own having a moment in the sunshine?
Probably on my own, but I'm, excuse me, I'm just thinking of, it's that looking into the middle distance and being surrounded by nature and balmy air and sunshine, and just away from traffic noise and everything else. And that's idyllic, for me.
That shall be your clearing.
Thank you.
I'm now going to arrive with a tree in your clearing, and I'm going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. So this is where you've been kind enough to have thought about, you've had 5 minutes to have thought about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. That's where the random squirrels will come in, borrow from the film Up. And then the 1 is a quirky or unusual fact about you, Pete Townsend, we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us. So over to you to... It's not a memory test, just to reassure you, but how would you like to interpret that structure?
Well, I'll just go through the sequence that you asked for.
Please do.
I don't want it to be too negative. I'm quite a self-deprecating person. So, but I will start on something a bit negative. But my childhood, and I had a father I never aspired to things he wanted me to aspire to. So as a consequence, I was always a bit of a failure. And that's stuck with me. And I think it can stick with, I don't know that parents really realize what they're doing with their children, how they bring them up. If I sort of didn't really have the support that I otherwise could have had, and never felt adequate. And that stuck with me. And so I never feel that I really achieved something because, I can remember all sorts of things he said that just kept me off at the knees, Can I say one in particular, which is a bit...
Sure.
I joined an amateur group in the 80s that performed in Bristol Hippodrome, and we did a thing called the Great Waltz, and I was the comedic part of it. It was about Strauss and the fact that he was always bringing out these new waltzes, and he had a manager who was really more interested in letting off fireworks than actually running his his life. And so I actually get blown up partway through the storyline, but it was all full of Strauss waltzes and words to it. It was called The Great Waltz. And it was, I think it was the 50th anniversary of the club, and got my father to actually come and see me. And so it went really well on this particular night because they'd invited Princess Anne and Duke of Beaufort, Duchess of Westminster, all the MPs, Bristol Lord Mayor, and they were all there. And my dad loved that. And I thought, well, he can be proud of me for the first time in his life. And so I went down, I saw him in the stalls wandering around. They had a party afterwards. There was champagne, there was caviar. The Secret Service were carrying out a lot of this actually to their Land Rovers outside, but nevertheless. And I went down to him and I just said, well, how was that? Well, I'm all right. I said, I bet you never thought you'd have your son actually performing in front of royalty. And he said, yeah, you're still a clown though, aren't you? And that summed up our relationship.
Wow.
I still didn't
Yes.
match up to what he wanted, you know. And I just thought, well, he could at least do, and yet I did hear from colleagues of his that somebody said he's very proud of you.
Yes.
And I said, really? And they said, yeah, he talks about it. I said, he's never said anything to me like that at all.
Tragedy, yes.
And yeah, it was. And,
Yeah.
and it clouded my feeling towards him, obviously, because I just couldn't do anything right as far as I was concerned.
And
so
did you have siblings as well, or were you an only?
Yeah, I had a sister.
Yeah.
And can I check in the fact that we were both adopted?
Yes, I was going to ask whether who's your real dad or not, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't my real dad. And the irony was he adopted me on his birthday, or the family did, or my parents. Yes, and the same really applied to her as well. So that's rather sad, actually. And I felt, although I was knocked back by it, I also felt sad for him.
Yes.
That he couldn't get that feeling and he couldn't talk to me about it. It's a destructive attitude of mine.
There is that adage, your criticism of me is a reflection of you. So sometimes people's own stunted inability to express themselves is because they've had that in their own conditioning as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And more explicitly to throw in, you said he wasn't your real dad.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. So do talk about that more explicitly, because you were, one of the things that Sue mentioned was you were unexpectedly rediscovered by your twin sister.
Yeah. Do you want us to go through this one now?
It seems like that's I want to make sure we got it, because I want to sort of skim over that.
Yeah. It's all tied in with the acting. Amateur acting I was doing at the time. I came back from the final, final rehearsal before we went to the Minack Theatre, and I was playing the Scarlet Pimpernel in the Scarlet Pimpernel, and I came back 11 o'clock at night on a Thursday night, I think it was. We were going to be traveling down to Cornwall the following day, and I had a call, and it just said, is Peter Townsend so and so. And I had a couple living with me at the time who actually set up Circomedia, and Helen had picked up the call and said, this person was saying, what's the name of your father? What's the name of your mother? We didn't know one another that well, and so but gave a number, and I phoned back, and I got a sort of, oh no, gone to bed, tell her in the morning. And anyway, following morning, I got a phone call, and this lady said, are you Peter Townsend? Yes. What may I ask what your mother's name is and father's? I told her, and she said, oh, well, I think you better get a drink. And I said, well, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And she said, you might need it. I said, no, come on, tell me. And she said, I'm your twin sister. And I didn't know I had a twin sister.
And how old were you at this point?
46.
Good grief. Yeah.
And we both live separate lives, but there are links between the two, which are just, and when you look into twins, there are very, very strange things that link people together, coincidences. We did end up going to the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis. They had a twins. We had a part project. We were the 135th set of twins. Britain was a really great place to get twins who'd been separated, because after the Second World War, there were a lot of illegitimate births, with soldiers coming back home and all the rest of it. And we were in that.
And you're 73, so we're talking about the 40s, aren't we here?
What, when I was born? Not 40. We were born in 47.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found I had we stayed at this place down in Porthcurno, and the following Monday, she'd sent me a whole load of photographs. I'd sent her photographs of me, and the only photos I had was actually being in shows, because I don't have photographs taken of me at all. She'd sent a photograph of us two in prams, or in a pram. And at the time, probably half a mile from where I was living and where I still live, Victoria Walk in Cotton. And it was like, it was a shelter for the fallen women. And my mother had come up from Cornwall. There was no social security. And she came to have a child and then have it adopted and then go back again. And it was done by quasi-religious setup. And and it turns out that the photographs that I was seeing down in Cornwall on the Monday morning, as we were having our breakfast before we went off to do the rehearsals for the play in the evening at the Minack Theatre, were photographs of us in this garden, which I've since obviously visited because it's only half a mile away from, of these two bored little kids and she had us for 3 months before, I think it was 3 months before I was adopted.
And I'm assuming you've had no contact, therefore, with your mother, as you said, of its time, the Fallen Woman label.
I did have, and in fact, Beverly, my twin sister, had actually, she worked her socks off to try and find out who her mother was. And it was through trying to find out who her mother was that she found me. The problem was the way the whole thing was set up in London. She went, she had to go to Somerset House, or I think it was Somerset House, and you had a card index. And that card index was related to a massive storage hydro in Stockport. And in those days, obviously, we're not talking about times when you could actually get on the net or anything. And so she had to fax a name she saw. She was trying to find somebody who could have been born, or could have been married, or could have died. And you look in all these sort of categories, and you're looking for somebody. And she by then knew her mother's first and last name and her middle name, but the way that the categories were actually listed on this card index only had the middle name with the first letter.
Yeah.
And our mother had quite an interesting, nice middle name, but her name was Miranda, second name, which is obviously a Shakespearean name. But she would say, get a name and a date and things for whether it was married or born or whatever which she was going through. She then asked for the fax to be sent back, and I think it was £5 a time, and it come back, and it was Maureen, Margaret, Muriel, anybody but Miranda. But she couldn't say what it was Miranda because it was only listed with the that letter. So it took her weeks to find her mother, and at the end she was dealing with her Pam, who was her good friend, who actually I think set up NORCAP subsequently. That's a national organisation for the reuniting of children and parents.
Wow.
And she was worked in social services, and so Bev phoned her up and said, "Look, I'm having real difficulty trying to find my mother. I've got my birth certificate, but I can't get any further with it. I can't find my mother." And she said, "Well, read out what's written." And she said, "Born." And her name was Hetherington, and it was at this is nice, the Unmarried Mothers Ward of Bristol Maternity Hospital, and she was born at 8:30 a.m. and so she read it all out and said, "Okay, so that's what I got And she said, well, I think you need to get yourself a stiff drink. She said, why is that? Well, just get yourself a stiff drink. So she did. This is on the phone call.
And you too were invited to have a stiff drink later on.
Well, this is later on, yeah. And she said, so what are you going to tell me? She said, well, you're a twin, or even triplets, multiple birth. Why is that? Well, in those days, they only gave the date of the birth. They didn't give the timing of the birth. The timing was there for hereditary purposes subsequently. So if, the first born, who is the first, as far as heredity is concerned.
Yes.
And so she said, so you've got a brother or a sister, or maybe even more, you never know, but probably a brother or a sister. So she suddenly finds she's not just looking for a mother, she's looking for a sibling.
Yes.
And so she found our mother first and then found me. And I got this phone call, and I was the 18th person that she'd phoned in Bristol. She found out through Pam's good offices that it should be in Bristol. And Pam said, people who go to Bristol often stay there. They don't move away. So you might have a good chance of finding. And so she did. And I was the 18th person she'd phoned up that day. She'd gone to the library and was making phone calls from the library where she lived, which is in Kenilworth, and just got hold of me. Well, not me, but Helen answered the phone, and that's how that happened. So I phoned her that morning and then set off for Porthcurno only a few hours later. And then I don't think it was Saturday, I think it was the following Monday, had these black and white photographs, which she'd actually sent in the post. I opened them up as I was eating my full English breakfast, in the...
Having been at the Minack, yes.
Yeah.
And you're still in touch, I hope, with Beverly to this day?
We saw her last week. Yeah. And we stayed with her. She now lives up in Orton on the Hill, which is in very rural Leicestershire, with her husband. And we kept in touch. And we're quite similar in lots of regards and not in others, but there are similarities. Obviously, we're what you call a duozygote, i.e. we're not identical because we couldn't be because we're different sex, but you've got traits like skin texture, eyes, nose, the way your brain works to some extent, and you can sense that.
What an extraordinary force of nature and energy she applied to find you. I mean, that's
incredible.
Such an extraordinary
thing. Primarily also because, as I understood it, she had to go down to London at weekends and trail around with a friend of hers who was also interested in genealogy and looking back onto, and in those days it was more unusual. People can easily do it now because of the internet, but then they had to physically go to London and go through all these
many
details.
People would give up because it was too much of a mountain.
And it must have cost her hundreds of pounds getting back all these the wrong person, and it's a needle in a haystack job. Trying to find somebody who could have been born on a certain day. So, when could she have given birth to us? Any time from sort of 15 to 45, and then dates in that when, the birth could have been done. And all that. It just phenomenal what she did. It was amazing.
It's almost like several episodes in there about trying to find out the genealogy and where your mum ended up and all of that stuff. But gosh, what an extraordinary... That means you're beautifully shaping what shaped you there. So we're still in the tree shaking the four things that have shaped you. What would you like to say next?
Well, the twin bit was part of it, really, because the first thing was my father, and my upbringing
and his poor conditioning.
And I'm being unfair probably by being so critical, but I don't think he realized. I don't think people do realize that. I mean, you can, used to be you had to have a license for a dog, but you didn't have to have a license for a child. Which seems absolutely crazy, doesn't it, when you think about it? That that people.
And yet he took you on, and
he did.
I'm not defending him in the slightest.
No. I obviously didn't aspire to what he wanted me to aspire to, but there you go. I another thing for changing with regard to acting and all the rest of it. I basically started. Well, I could sing because I had a loud voice. I could sing. This is by sheer coincidence, really coincidence. I was in a pub in Ham Green meeting a husband of a really good friend of mine. I've never met him. And while I was there, there was what sounded like a Welsh male voice choir was going on in Skittle Alley in this pub, and these people were coming out, and they were going to the loo and coming back and having to go sing, you know. And I stopped one of them. I said, "Excuse me, are you Welsh a male voice choir?" "Oh, no, no, no." I said, "Well, who are you?" "Oh, we be the Owls." "You're the Owls?" "Yeah, the Owls, yeah." So why are you with the Owls? "Oh, well, we go out singing at Christmas. We're having our post-Christmas get-together here in the Skittle Alley." "Really? Oh, right, fine. So what do you sing?" "Oh, we sing for charity. For what do you sing?" "Carols. Go out singing carols. We dress up, you know, top hats, Dickensian, basically."
Yes.
I mean, we're in, you know, back in early Dickensian time, and so I said, and at the time I was getting a group together from school to go out carol singing at Christmas, and it was people who'd gone to university or moved away, and they came back to their parents' nest at Christmas, and I'd phone up and say, you know, and we used to go around to the old teachers that we used to have and sing for them and other things, and I got the whole sense of me phoning up, saying, "Oh, you're back, are you?" "Yeah, we're back. Yeah, sing with seeing the parents," and then I could imagine the hand going over the receiver. "He's phoning up to ask if we can go carol singing again," and I realised that it was withering on the vine, and I was really not doing anybody any good at all. And so this thing turned up, and I said, "Well, could I join you next year?" And this is 72.
Yeah.
So I did, and borrowed bits and pieces, and got to about 79, and my marriage by then was my first marriage was on the rocks, and uh, one of the chaps said, and I'd been singing with them then for 5, 6 years, and I said, why don't you all sing together in a year besides oh, I play skittles. "Oh, no, I'm playing cricket." And so, but what don't you? I mean, you all enjoy singing. Don't, "Oh yeah, but why don't you sing other things?" "Oh, I haven't got time for that." And one chap said, "Well, I do a bit of singing." I said, "Do you?" He said, "Well, yes, I'm the lead occasionally, you know, with the local Savoy Operatic Society." I said, "Who are they?" And he said, "Well, they sing GNS." I said, "GNS." He said, "Yeah." I said, "But, you know, if you'd like to come along and see if you like." So I went along to this. And I'd never really, I'd sung in the school choir and things, and totally untutored. And he said, "Yeah, well, come along." So I went along. A wonderful music teacher called Sheila Rice um, made you sing. And the great thing about GNS, which nobody has got any time for anymore, but was that you actually delivered the lines with clear diction. That was the most important thing because the words were so important from
Yeah.
from Gilbert, and so I joined them, and that was really a good start. And then one of the guys was doing Nabucco with Bristol Opera Company and said, "We need somebody to hold a spear. Would you like that?" So I said, "Okay, I'll go along." And I stood around and listening to all this fantastic sound. They were doing Nabucco, and I thought I could hear the harmonies, so I started to join in. And so by the time we were doing the show, I was up there singing with the bass line, which I got a good ear for harmony.
Yeah.
And then I joined them, and then that just led on from one thing to another through the 80s. And in the 80s, and of course I said I had loads more time because I wasn't married. And in the 80s, to
Did you say
join
that
it,
you got loads more time because you weren't married? Is that what you said? Or...
yeah,
Yes. Okay.
spare time, if you know what I
Spare
mean.
time.
And
Yeah.
you're kicking your heels a bit. And in those days, and I think probably similar now, girls getting into an amateur dram group or singing group, well, I mean, it's a hard task. You see wonderful singers next, and they don't get in or whatever. And a chap comes along and oh, you want to join? Sign there, and that was it. You're in.
So singing being a great shapeage of your love of singing.
Yeah, to start off with, yeah.
Yes.
But I found I suffered with more and more problems with asthma and respiratory problems and things, and I've then found I could act a bit as well. And so it was if you were doing a light comedy, they needed somebody who could sing and act.
Yeah.
And sometimes the singers are not very good actors, and I could perhaps act a bit better than them. So I got some really nice parts where you had to be able to act and sing.
Yeah.
And performing in, Redgrave and Colston Hall and
And you really did do as Beverly said. You didn't move away from Bristol, which is why she was able to find you. So you're very ingrained in the fabric.
Yeah,
of,
yeah. I didn't have
performing, singing.
Yeah. So then I then joined, I don't know, about 20 different clubs.
Yeah.
And it was great. The 80s was fantastic. Theatre Royal Bath.
Yeah.
And doing really, and of course when you're an amateur you can do lead roles and things, which is just amazing. So that's what led that way. I've gone on for ages.
Well, I have got to bet if we get into a bit of a rabbit hole of cashier number 4, please. So we're back into I think it's the 4th shapeage now, the 4th thing to shape you.
Well, it was well, I had the first one was my father, second was twins, and the third thing was my divorce, but also subsequently after that I actually was made redundant through the 80s, through the Margaret Thatcher 80s. You were headhunted, and just because I could speak loudly, I got various jobs which probably I wasn't really any good at, but they were throwing money at people. So and then in the early 1990s there was a big crash and everybody was being laid off, and I was as well. And then I kicked my heels around, didn't know what to do.
And what's been your main way of making money over the years? Because just being acting and singing, I know, it's a silly way not to make a living unless you're very lucky being an actor. So
well, I did do a little bit of extra work, but in terms of acting, I ended up with a van.
This is the emptying houses.
Yeah, and then a chap got in touch with me, and he did upholstery, and he would actually reupholster people's 3-piece suites that they really didn't want to get rid of, but we're a bit mucky. And so we ended up, I'd be doing that with him, and real strong arm stuff, lifting some very, very horsehair stuff. Oh God, yeah. And so that, I mean, we're talking of peanuts. I lived on peanuts, and well, not really, but nearly. But that kept me going with that. And then other people would say, and then eventually, a girlfriend I had on and off through the 80s, she'd gone to the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, and I thought, I just didn't want to do what I'd been doing. We talked about my actual job that I did, but I ended up being a technical sales engineer, but I just did not enjoy it. Didn't enjoy I'm a terrible salesman. I'm just hopeless. I could talk a hind leg of a donkey, but I can't sell anything because I'm too basically honest. I think, I can't tell lies or fibs. And I was making money with that. And then I applied to go to the Old Vic School just to try and stop them from making me an office manager somewhere or something. So at the time computers are coming in, and I thought, well, the best way to not be employed in an office or whatever is to be computer non-compliant. And so I learned nothing about computers. I couldn't lie, so I didn't learn anything about computers at all. So when they said, and I was signing on, and they'd say, well, you've got quite an experience here. And by now computers are coming in. Are you computer literate? No, I'm not. And I wasn't lying. I hadn't got a clue, and I didn't want to either. But I did actually get sent to go a couple of courses to try and.
And did you go to the Old Vic Theatre School? Is that the other thing you did?
Eventually.
Yes.
And
which is where I went too. Hurrah!
Hurrah!
We're like twins, as they say, but in a different way.
And the couple I mentioned before, Bim and Helen, were doing Circumedia.
It's Bim Mason, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
And well, they live in
Mr. Elastic Bands on his face, I think.
Yeah. 3 or 4 years. And he was wanting to get people onto the Circumedia thing, and there were students who the University of West of England wanted to get back in to retrain on computers because things are moving so fast. But people who'd actually done a computer degree or something to do with computers were finding that they lost a job and they wanted to go somewhere else and they didn't have the technical expertise. They needed more training.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the government wanting to reduce the unemployment lists. And so there was an arrangement whereby they could go to University of West of England and be a student, but be paid. They could get unemployment pay as a student, and they disappeared off the unemployment list. You see, all very nice.
Sounds
for the
like the
government.
enterprise allowance scheme,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so he said, well, why not try that? So I think I was the first ever student at the old Vic who was actually getting unemployment pay. But I had to get Chris Dennis to actually countersign.
He was the principal in my time.
Yeah,
too.
countersign. He was great. He was wonderful. And countersign or somebody else. My hours at the end of I had to do sort of.
And what year are we talking? Because I was
94, 96.
Oh, okay. So I was there before you, actually, 86 to 88. So
yeah.
Yes. And I believe we could be on to the inspirations now.
Oh, right.
So 3 things that inspire you.
Right. Well, obviously, watching theatre and being in a live theatre, and I'm astounded when I watch actors.
Yeah.
I think, how the hell did you learn all that? I've always had a problem learning, which is why I'd be far better as a radio actor than.
Yeah.
And I'm staggered when I watch fantastic acting, and it just bowls me over.
Inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really inspiring. Yeah. So that inspires me. I also like comedy. As a kid, there was Goon Show and things. I can remember seeing Monty Python with and being like a Ben Gunn character run about 11 o'clock at night, I think it was. It came on for about half an hour and they just sort of ran it as an also ran thing and they were trying to hide this strange thing. And I can remember watching it with my father and I was falling about watching it. I thought it was so funny.
That's very relatable because Monty Python are my heroes as well.
Yeah. And I mean, there's loads of boring stuff in it as well. Don't get me wrong, but some of it was just so excruciatingly funny. And so that and silent films I've always enjoyed, and Lauren Hardy.
Stan Laurel is my all-time comic hero.
Yeah, exactly so. And the film that was made. Did you get involved in that? There was made a film and
no, the Steve Coogan one.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. But
yeah, and that they did some. The Balmoral went out with everybody on board.
Yeah,
going to Ireland.
Moored in Bristol Docks.
Yeah. And that sort of so that was always inspired me. I mean, as a kid, other things we used to go out on country rambles. There used to be a country around where I lived, and it's all been built on where I used. It's quite frightening. But you used to go out on rambles and birds nesting and butterflies and. I used to get eyed hawk moths on the apple trees in the back garden and privet hawk moths and these amazing looking things. And if you've ever seen a hawk moth caterpillar and where I've moved to, when I moved years and years ago.
Well, you've then since cluttered it.
But but the middle of Bristol, I had not an eyed hawk moth, an elephant hawk moth actually in my front garden and not half a mile from this. Well,
you're the first guest I've ever had who's got an elephant hawk moth in their garden.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, and things like that. So I have my observers books, but I also have my observers books on trains and aircraft and where I was. I was close to the end of Filton Runway.
Yeah,
I was near to Filton Station, so I was both a plane watcher and a.
You're just very interested in stuff.
I just
assuming.
Love it. Yeah. And also and inspiration also. I went to a grammar school which was really didn't produce. It produced Melvyn Bragg's wife and Lord Brown, who was the head of BP, and that's about it, I think.
And you.
Tony Britton was there. If you can remember Tony Britton, that doesn't mean anything to you at all.
Yes.
And he was expelled. He was expelled for flying a pair of ladies' knickers from the flagpole. How about that? So that's about the only claim for for the school, which started in 1606. That's another story anyway. But amongst the teachers, there were great teachers, but it was, I think it was designed to produce fodder for the civil service. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, that was
I'm
back in
sure
the
that
day,
that's
yes.
what we were channeled towards. And at the end of it, there was a careers master who hadn't got a clue, I don't think. And you know, if it wasn't a government thing, he didn't know where to put you. Somebody like me, who's never known where he wanted to go. I've never had a direction. It could be anything. I like a bit of that, bit of that, but you know, I've got a grasshopper mind. It didn't help really, but there was one great teacher. He was the English teacher, and he just a few times he said wonderfully encouraging things to me. He used to have to write essays in those days, and I wrote a story.
And what was his name?
Bill Handon.
And he's a source of inspiration.
He was,
because he's the first. He's giving you positive feedback at last that you deserve.
And he read out one of the stories. I think I nicked a load of the storylines from a book I've been reading, but he liked it, and he gave me a thing. But he read it out to the class, and I was squirming because he said the essays from last weekend, right? I'm going to read you one, and he read this, and I'm going like this, and everybody's going, "What was that? Who did that?" So he put it down at the end, and he said, and that was by Pete Townsend. They went, "What?" and he was just lovely. And he got cancer, and he died only about a year later. And he was just a lovely man. And everybody, I never realised it, but talking to the chaps I've re-met after the 400th year anniversary get together in 2006. And I met these guys who I went to school with in the 60s. And they said just what a wonderful bloke he was. And I didn't realise it wasn't just me. He was nice too. He was just wonderfully warm and supportive.
And a wonderful source of inspiration.
Yeah, he was great.
And talking about collecting the rare moths or things to distract you, now we're on to two things that are your squirrels. What are your monsters of distraction? Two things that never fail to grab your attention. Oh, that's borrowed from the film Up, irrespective of anything else.
It's a bit boring, I'm afraid, because it's away from nature. I've got this sort of penchant for old vehicles.
Yeah, you mentioned
and it has to be a specific type of old vehicle, but I do just enjoy looking at old vehicles. So if you're driving along and suddenly there's you know, it's one of those things like you could drive off the main road because, God, did you see that? And you know, you could be driving into
So what's your favourite old vehicle to espy?
Well, I've never really seen them. They are the ones I've got in the back of my old, which are now never ever going to see the light of day on the road, I don't think. But there's a funny old thing called a 4CV. It's not a 2CV, it's a 4CV. And it's not made by Citroën, it's made by Renault. And it looks like a noddy car. It's just the shape of a noddy car. It's like a cross between a Volkswagen Beetle and a Morris Minor, which has been sat on. And they're just wonderful cars. And I met a chap down at the Bewley Auto Jumble back in the 90s and still in touch with him. And he'd taken one apart right back to the last nut and bolt. He took 15 years to rebuild it. And then he actually moved over to France, and he's got it over with him in France now. But and I
have you tempted him with yours to see if he wants to rebuild that one too?
No. He's done his 15 years. Don't you think that's enough time to spend on a car?
Yeah.
I don't think the wife would let him. But yeah, there's that, and and the other thing was being at the end of Filton Runway. I saw the Bristol Brabazon. I can remember it.
The Bristol what? Rabbit?
No, Brabazon.
Brabazon.
Anybody nowadays would say, well, there's a place at the end of on the A38. It's unfortunate that the whole runway and everything is gone. But as a train spotter, sort of boring little kid, I'd be down there with my pencil and my Alina 35X 35mm camera, taking photographs of aircraft landing and taking off. And it was a really fabulous place for a kid to grow up, because I had the nature, I had the railways where steam engines, I can remember, and you know, aircraft. So it was great. you've got all these facilities that you can actually,
Yes.
and you never knew what to do first.
And I thought you were going to mention Concorde, because of course that's a famous, iconic aeroplane connected to the landing strips of Bristol.
Yep, and I was there at the initial flight, at the end of the runway, well up where there are now loads and loads of houses. I was there at the 25th when it came back, 25th anniversary. And Radio Bristol did a thing called Concorde Stories. Chap I know called Tom Phillips, who now lives in Bulgaria. He wrote.
I know him too. He used to be a Venue editor.
Yeah, that's right. He was an editor of Venue. He wrote stories, sort of loosely tying up the Concorde thing. So we did, under the auspices of Radio Bristol, did do Concorde Stories at Victoria Rooms. And I played Brian Trubshaw. And so we actually had a theme song, which Richard Jeffrey Gray, just name dropping again, who's the organist choir master at Bristol Catholic Cathedral, he wrote a song on it. So when the last Concorde came in, and through the auspices of Vicky Klein, who was producer at Radio Bristol, and Les Mountford, who staged everything, we ended up underneath the Concorde wing when it stopped and the engines turned off, and we sang this song that was
on its final voyage,
on the very last one, the very last line. So flight. I've been there on the first flight on the 20th anniversary, underneath the wing as the engine shut down for the last time. And strangely enough, they didn't allow any photojournalists there at all. So you had Prince Andrew and the Les Brody, who was the pilot, and Rod Edelman, I think he was the chairman.
Great memory for flight lieutenant names.
He was the chairman of British Airways, and they were on board. And as they came down the stairs, my friend Les, who'd recently got a digital camera, we're talking 2004, I think, or 2003, and he just recently got a digital camera, and he had photographs of the Spitfire barrel rolling over the top of the Concorde as it landed, and it was quite a rainy day, and it was really fantastic photographs he had. And then he had them all coming down the stairs, and Les Brody had put his cap in between two of the two sort of not cupboards but metal parts of the structure when they were flying. And the thing about Concorde was that it expanded about 6 inches at supersonic speeds because of the high temperatures, even though it was being cooled at that height. And so if you put anything in between two bits of thing came apart, when it landed, it was there for keeps. And so he put the peak of his cap, I think it was, in there. And if you go to fabric. Aerospace Bristol, it's still there because you can't get it out because it's been squeezed up together.
It would need to go back at supersonic flight to get his hat back.
Exactly so, yeah.
Now it's the one, finally, in the 54321, the quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know about you, Pete Townsend, as you do your special legacy life reflections until you tell us.
Well, it's something you actually alluded to earlier on. I have been mistaken. Other people have been mistaken for the wrong one. For the other one, I'm the least known Pete Townsend. There are loads of other ones. There was a golfer. There was a plumber in Bristol. There's all sorts of people called Pete Townsend. But I was at the time actually going to be in Tommy, which is a strange, ironical quirk. And I was going to be in an amateur production, only a tiny part. Bristol Musical Comedy Club did it at the Redgrave. And in my van, I went up to Sheffield to the Crucible, and Paul Lewis, who is the guy who does all the technical stuff, lighting, his daughter was stage manager there, and we got 30, because at the time there were no big screens. We're talking of big lumpy things, and I brought down in my van 30 very large monitors. And they stacked them up at the back and had a massive screen with all these things.
Yeah.
And were able to create a massive screen at the back of Tommy in the Redgrave. And so I went up and got these, And anyway, we're rehearsing it. I say it's a tiny part. It's only the vicar. He's only got, I'm often vicars and solicitors. It always seems, and that, I don't know why, but it's some way I look, I think, one morning through the post, I got this invite to go to see the UK premiere of Wicked at the Apollo Victoria. So I just turned up to the rehearsal. I mean, it's so weird. And I just said to people, anybody got an invite to go and see the UK? What do you mean? I said, well, I've got an invite to go and see the UK Wicked. I said, I'd never heard of it. I said, Wicked, yeah. Oh, not with, what's her name? I can't remember her name. That's the lead singer. She's just phenomenal. And I said, yeah. How did you get that? I said, I don't know. I just came. Let's have a look at it. And it was this strange iridescent green color that they adopted for Wicked, and it was all done in that. And they said, well, how did you get that? I said, just came through the post. Surely you got one as well. No. So I thought about it, and it took a long while.
Yeah.
Till eventually I thought, they got the wrong one, haven't they? That's what has happened. And so I phoned up and left a message. I didn't get to speak to anybody. I left a message and I said, I just thought I'd let you know that I think you've got the wrong Pete Townsend. If this is an invite to the premiere, I'm the unknown, boring Pete Townsend in Bristol, not the one in the Who. And I didn't get any response, so I got a bit too close to it for comfort. So I phoned up again, and I got this chap said, "Yes, hello," and I said, "I'm just phoning up. I left a message. Oh, you're the Pete Townsend?" I said, "Yep." And he said, "Oh, right." I said, "So, I'm sorry, you've gone to the wrong one. How did that happen?" And he said, "Well, I've looked into it, and it was we had this student in, and you're in equity, you're in the Bible, as it were, and she just did it on the name." So I said, "All right, so
But you got in. That's
so I
important.
can't go." And he said, "Oh, no, you can." I said, "Really?" He said, "For being so honest, you can come." I said, "Can I bring a partner?" And he said, "Yeah, okay." So a friend of mine, she lived in London at the time, and she worked at Unilever Export right by Blackfriars Bridge. So, and I Keith Warmington.
Yeah.
I told him. I told him.
He's previously guested, actually.
Yeah, I told him about it. He said, "That's a really good story." He said, "Can I contact you when you're doing this?" And I said, "Yeah,
You've been on
okay."
Radio Bristol talking about it too.
Well, this is we're talking about a long time ago, and I said, "Yeah." So I went up to London on the coach in shorts and flip flops, like I often am, carrying a white DJ, a tuxedo and everything else, and Sarah got me. I went to the director's loo in the headquarters of Unilever by Blackfriars Bridge, and I went in wearing flip flops and shorts and came out wearing a white DJ. And Keith phoned me when I was just outside. I just got up there and from the coach, and he said, "Where are you now?" And I said, "Well, I'm just about to go in. I'm just in trepidation because I'm not quite sure what sort of reception I'm going to get." But he said, "Oh, well, tell us how it goes." So I did phone the following day, and what happened was we went together. Sarah came with me, but didn't want to stay. But they had a party afterwards. When we get in there, there's all these faces that I really didn't recognize, other than I thought, he's famous, he's famous, he's famous, she's famous. I mean, basically, it was all the important
You got
people.
in the inner circle. That's
I got
fantastic.
into the inner circle.
Yeah.
Afterwards, and well, right. I was sat next to Christopher Biggins, so I put Sarah there.
He too has previously guested.
Yeah, so I put Sarah there just in case, and I didn't want to annoy him. And so at the end, they had 10 red London buses, which took all the people who were there up to a special party in the law courts on the Strand. And I thought, I could try this. I mean, I've blagged myself so far. So I went down and came up to the one of the buses, and they said, "Your name," muscles on the forehead and all the rest of it. And I said, "Pete Townsend." "Oh, go in there. That's all right, fine." And so I got in there.
So you got the ultimate bus ticket as well.
Yeah, and then offloaded at the law courts. Went in, and the whole it's the Wills Hall, in Bristol. Well, it's like that, but many times over.
Yeah.
And there's this long, wonderful, and it's all lit with uplighters and downlighters with this wonderful green. There are ladies going around with canapes saying, and I'm wandering about, and people sort of thought, who is this lost person? Came up and had a chat. Said, what who are you? And I was obviously looking really, dazed and lost. And I said, I'm the unknown Pete Townsend. And they said, well, how do you come to be here? And I said, well, and then I explained it. Hey, come over here, have a listen to this story.
The unknown Pete Townsend, that's great.
And the only thing was at the end of there was another party for the Inner Sanctum. Stuart Elton Johns and all the rest of it were in there. And I thought, and I chickened out. I could have got
so far.
I could have gone for that, and I didn't, and so that's as far as I got. But I thought I did pretty well.
Great quirky fact too. So that's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to talk briefly about alchemy and gold. When you're at purpose and in flow in your life, what have you been absolutely happiest doing in what you're here to reveal to the world?
I like listening to Radio 4. As Glenda Jackson once said, it's been my university of the air. It's what I learned life with.
Lovely expression.
And I am totally at one with her. I've been listening to it since I was a kid. Most people didn't know,
It's such a lovely turn of phrase. It's the university of the air. So you're at your absolute happiest when involved in the university of the air.
Well, and you just never know it's a potpourri. You never know what's going to hit you.
Yeah.
And you find interest in all of it. And you know that the tremendous amount of work has gone into most of it anyway. And, the documentaries and everything else.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a comedy and all that. So, but I can do that. And I have done it for years. And I've not had a television for about 40 years, which is why I don't know lots of faces and lots of current things. I mean, if I went for a pub quiz now, I wouldn't have a clue because it's all related to something to do with television or who's been famous for 15 minutes.
Radio's been your thing.
So and then you can do what you want to do when you're listening to the radio. So I'm tinkering with cars and I can have the radio going on, and do that. And I like listening to old comedy. I mean, goon shows have appeared that I never heard when I was a kid. And I've got all Spike Milligan's books, and I've got the Goon Show scripts. I've got the 40 Tower scripts and all the rest of it. And I just enjoy the sort of things, and a cup of coffee and a chocolate ginger biscuit, and I'm away, I'm
going to award you with a cake now.
Oh,
so
really?
You get to put a cherry on the cake now with what's a favorite inspirational quote that's always given you succor and carried you towards your future, Pete Townsend?
I don't know. It's a don't give up trying thing, I suppose. Or you might be right. You might be wrong, but you might be right. So carry on doing it for a bit longer, because you never know, it might turn out to be all right. But when I'm doing anything, I'm never sure whether it's working or it's not working, whether I'm good at it or I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
And
but keep on keeping on.
Yeah, keep on going on. Your
next thing is what's with the gift of hindsight, what notes, help or advice might you proffer to a younger version of Pete Townsend?
Well, there's best advice I've been given. I'm trying to remember her surname. I did a play in the Alma upstairs. It was called Shut Up, I think. It was about the Exclusive Brethren, and written by a lady who'd been in the Exclusive Brethren. And when I was acting, when I was actually in rehearsal, the director, Carolyn, looked at me and she just said, stop. I said, what's up? She said, I can see you acting. I said, sorry? She said, I can see you acting. You're not, I know that you're acting. Be yourself, be in the part more, don't act. And I thought, that's brilliant. That is just fantastic.
That is fantastic, yes.
I can see you acting is just a wonderful line. And sometimes you go to, if you go to see a show and occasionally you think, I can see that person acting. I can see the technique. I can see the things being done. It's all being tied together, but it's not working.
Yes.
Yeah. And which was brilliant. I just thought, and I didn't take it as a criticism at all.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah. You're spot on, Carolyn. You got it right.
Lovely answer. And we're going to ramp up to Shakespeare shortly to talk about legacy, the final thing. But just before we do that, this is the pass the golden baton moment, please.
Right.
As you've experienced this from within, and this is a special legacy life reflections to record your story for posterity, who might you most like to pass the golden baton along to in order to keep the golden thread of the storytelling going?
There's a lady involved in the Bristolians that I mentioned earlier on when we went down to Falmouth with Sally Noble. Sally Noble Everybody who was in youth drama in Bristol from the sort of 70s, 80s onward would know her. Unfortunately, she died, I don't know, 5-10 years ago now. But her friend and compatriot in nearly everything they did was Edwina Lloyd.
Yeah.
And she is now 86, 87. It's got an incisive brain, not unlike yours, Chris, I must say.
Thank you.
And she can remember everything clearly. And on the way here, because that was the idea in my mind, we've actually asked her, would she mind if I mentioned her? She's got a wonderful history of training and professional acting,
Yeah.
and adjudicating. I know it's all related to acting, but there's obviously a bigger life story there as well. And I said, would you, if I mentioned your name, would that be okay if I passed your details on to Chris? And she said, no, that'd be fine. That was very, very kind of you. So,
And say her name one more time.
Yes, Edwina Lloyd.
Edwina Lloyd. Lovely.
And she's been a major part of a lot of youth drama in Bristol for the last 40 years or so.
And now, finally, inspired most profoundly in the Legacy Life Reflections curated structure, inspired by Shakespeare, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, we're going to talk about legacy, Pete Townsend. How, when all is said and done, do you think you most like to be remembered?
I suppose with to feel that other people may have valued me, even though I might have valued myself, and that I've contributed something to other people and helping them, or being a friend, being whatever. I mean, that's the most important thing. I think. I mean, I don't hold myself up as anything to be looked up to, really. But if people feel that I haven't wasted their time, then I'd be happy with that.
As this has been your moment in the sunshine of the Good Listening To show and Legacy Life Reflections, is there anything else you'd like to say, Pete Townsend?
No, I suppose I should thank my wife, who has actually shoehorned me into this chair, and she's got faith that I haven't got in myself, and thought that your idea was a great idea, and she doesn't just do that. This garden we've been digging, I mean, I fill one bag of builder's bag full of rubbish, she fills 4 at the same time. I'm so pedantic and pernickety, and I cut everything down to a small size. And
so 4-to-1 work ratio is what I've worked
phenomenal,
out. Doing the maths there.
Yeah. And so I should mention her, because I wouldn't be here without her.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being a guest and for being a very willing prize recipient for the Good Listening To show's Legacy Life Reflection structure. If you've been watching this and you'd be interested in having a conversation in either curating your own story or gifting it to somebody else, then have a look at the website, which is legacylifereflections.com. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Just many thanks for having the patience to interview me. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Been a pleasure and a privilege. And we've got a bit of a Ollie McConnell is in the background. He's making a filming. He's doing a film of the filming, a bit fly on the wall. So we'll ask you a couple of questions when this is all finished too. Okay. Thanks to Joe, our wonderful technician here at Future Leap Studios too. And thank you, Sue, for recommending the lovely Pete Townsend. I've been Chris Grimes, but that's been Pete Townsend, legacylifereflections.com. Good night.